Synchro, 1, 2, 3. Jetzt nur Sommer alle Woche. Welcome to Thomas's Driving Lounge here, starting with the Volvo XC40 front-wheel drive. However, we just happen to have the XC40 as front-wheel drive today, so you can also say the same about the C40 then with front-wheel drive. So now we're going to investigate what about front-wheel drive versus all-wheel drive, and also is there a difference between XC40 and C40 in driving. Do you need more power, and do you need the bigger battery actually? Here from a traffic light. 50. So of course you don't have the biggest punch. The steering wheel does give you some feedback because you just have the front wheel drive, but you see it's actually reasonably quick. So for city driving, the front wheel drive is definitely fast enough. We'll soon also head out to the motorway and see if there is then something like, we need more power or something. But for city driving, definitely more than enough. In general, about this vehicle, it feels great as a city vehicle, low center of gravity because of the battery pack. Steering input here is really good, feels precise and also natural. Here now, it's a little bit, it's a lot of fun. So also when you compare like combustion engine versions from the XC40 to this one here, the EV version is clearly the most fun to drive. It's spontaneous in the acceleration, it has a better center of gravity. Although it is heavier as for the weight, it's just more fun to drive. Suspension is actually a good compromise. We've had recently a lot of EVs where the suspension is just too rough, too stiff. Worst in the Tesla Model 3 and in the Model Y, super stiff. But even in the Ioniq 5 and in the Kia V6, the suspensions are just so stiff. Here in the XC40 EV, it is stiffer than in the combustion engine versions, also to cope with that increased weight and so on. However, I think here it's still a good compromise. If you are in a market which allows the 19-inch wheels, I would go with them because 20-inch wheels of course always cost you a little bit of comfort. The whole driving feeling of this vehicle is really flawless. You can use it very well in city, but also long term the Volvo seats have great ergonomics, and I'm feeling more comfortable on these seats here than recently with the Mercedes EQS, because the ergonomics that Volvo is using is just better, Now, no matter also which surface you have, the base seat, like the construction of the seat is just very, very good. That's one thing that I really love about the Volvo vehicles. And now motorway, acceleration 80 to 120 kilometers an hour with the front wheel drive. Oh, that's it. Still reasonable, still a nice punch. And then it would start to get, a little bit slower. It's very windy outside today, therefore maybe there's a lot of wind noise, more than usually would be. Noise insulation in general is actually quite decent in this vehicle, just at really, really high speeds, but it's also not meant to be, Here at 120 kilometers an hour, this is here like a current electric. You got that? A current electric consumption? Yes, thank you so much. Here, it's funny, okay? Yeah. Here we have around 35 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So you see here on motorway, consumption goes up quite quickly. In general, in city traffic so far, we're more at less than 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. But we see here, also due to the building form of the vehicle, it's not that aerodynamic. Indeed, motorway electric consumption is somewhat of a problem, and that would mean that the range significantly drops then at these speeds. But with a mix of city traffic and some motorway at different speeds, we end up here at the moment at some 22 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers. Oh, that's 50 with the all-wheel drive version. Yeah, racing from traffic light to traffic light, of course, doesn't really make sense. That was just for testing purposes now. But you saw the difference. I mean, especially that difference 0 to 50. I mean, wow, huge difference. So this all-wheel drive version here has a lot more boost and punch. So one pedal driving feeling definitely here. You just use the pedal and that one pedal and that's it. So you have a strong recuperation as soon as you lift your foot off the throttle or the pedal, and there's no recuperation setting here also. On the one hand you can say, hey, that's beautiful here, Hamburg Ulster. It does make things easy when you can't set anything and you just have to learn driving this one pedal driving, because here now gently off the throttle that you can finally dose, like when am I coming to a stop, and you learn that quite quickly. And it indeed also then comes here to a full stop. And then when you also gently apply the throttle, gently lift it again, then your passengers can also live with that. I think they found a good setup here. Electric driving, EV driving is about the one pedal driving mainly. I think it's a good decision because safety thing, when you lift your foot off the throttle and then switch in that split second, you're already decelerating. That might be a safety factor indeed. It's of course not a safety factor if you recuperate too harsh all the time and someone hits you in the back or something. The brake light is being activated, by the way. That's really according to the deceleration moment you have. And since this is a harsh recuperation, when you really lift your foot, then the brake lights also appear. So indeed, the main difference then from the drive, all-wheel drive, is that really spontaneous power. You just have to be a little bit more gentle with that, definitely. With the front-wheel drive model, you can more or less drive like with a combustion engine in a same spec, but here you basically have a performance car, definitely, and so you always know you have more than you could actually use. Yeah, but the driving feeling itself is pretty much similar then, besides of the acceleration. And also, since we're now here in the C40, is there any difference we could feel? Only when I look to the rear mirror, then I see, yeah, okay, the overview to the rear is a little bit worse than with the XC40. So that's one disadvantage. It's just a smaller window than there in the rear. I can still see to the rear, yes, but definitely XC40 delivers a better overview. When we soon come to the motorway, we do another acceleration at higher speeds, and also as for the energy consumption figure, now we have two biases in a different direction. First of all, told you earlier, the aerodynamics of the C40 are a little bit better. Indeed, in the 0 to 100 kilometers or 62 miles an hour acceleration figure is 0.2 seconds advantage for the C40, because especially in that area like 60 to 100, the aerodynamic effect already plays a role. That also means here in the city, doesn't matter. But when you're driving at motorway speeds, the C40 will be more efficient. Now motorway driving with the all-wheel drive C40, when we're already at speed, so 80 kilometers to 120 kilometers an hour, same as before. Let's go. Plop, that's it. Okay, that's a massive difference. Wow. This is really a performance car. Yeah. It's 2.5 seconds and that it's quicker in the initial acceleration, but here, even at higher speeds, it's still so much quicker. It really feels like a performance vehicle, no doubt. And even here, it's so quick. You can see that the front hood. You see it on camera actually? At the front, when I'm hitting the accelerator pedal, it's like a G-class accelerating now, because the weight is being shifted to the rear. And then we have that, super powerful acceleration. So if you're an acceleration friend, then this will give you so much more fun. And of course, when you're thinking you would drive even faster on a motorway, well, then of course you still have more punch. Here at 120 kilometers an hour, still around 30 kilowatt hours more kilometers. As for the consumption, here now cruise control. Set it here on the left side, still with real buttons. Good to have that, definitely. And here also the speed is being reduced immediately. We can also check out the blind spot monitor here on the right side. Let's see, should appear right now. There we go. You see this kind of, red boomerang. It's a very nice integration. When you hit the turning indicator, then you even get a flashing warning, for example. Works, of course, both sides. So motorway-wise, all-wheel drive is definitely the way to go. And C40, XC40, I think it's really a thing of which passengers do you have in the back there? Do you need that extra trunk height above the cover? Yeah, but then efficiency, of course, when you drive a lot of motorway, will be better with the C40. But I think at the end of the day, it's more or less a question of design. And here the all-wheel drive consumption is very interesting. So around 24-25 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers. So that's almost 40 kilowatt hours on 100 miles. That means, around 4 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers more than with the front-wheel drive with a small battery. Well, that means the concise range here today would be just over 300 kilometers and barely 200 miles at 7-8 degrees Celsius. So not that cold, but already quite cold. So you see here, this car does have a heat pump, and now from the new model years, it will also be standard from the lowest trim level they have the heat pump. That's of course really good. However, indeed, the Volvo XC40 and the C40, they are not the most efficient electric vehicles. That's the downside. Most other aspects we've seen here today, as for the driving fun and so on, really, really great. But the other competitors, some of them are really better as for the efficiency. As for front-wheel drive with small battery or all-wheel drive with a bigger battery, well, we did have higher consumption here with the all-wheel drive, so 3 to 4 kilowatt hours on 1 kilometers more. And that means that the range will be more or less the same, because on the one hand you have smaller battery but less consumption. On the other hand, bigger battery, but a little bit higher consumption. So this won't be the biggest effect then overall. Very interesting finding for today. Strong competitors, I think, definitely also the Kia EV6. Had a very good result in our test, and also the Ford Mustang Mach-E. See these episodes if you haven't seen them so far.